Thank you for joining us on Nigeria Tonight. I'm Felicity Ezewuike. Our coverage begins in New Delhi, India, where President Bola Tinubu arrived for a 6-day official visit, during which he will attend the G20 Leaders Summit, among other engagements. The Boeing 737 conveying the president and his entourage touched down at the Indira Gandhi International Airport, Delhi, at about 6:40 p.m. local time. That is 2:10 p.m. Nigerian time. Before participating in a summit slated for September 9 to 10, 2023, the president will attend several high-level meetings and engagements with other world leaders and business executives on the sidelines of the summit. President Tinubu will also meet with the Nigerian community in India. In a statement on Sunday by his special advisor on media and publicity, Ajuri Njalale, it was revealed that Tinubu would, through various engagements, attract global capital and increase foreign direct investments to the country. Njalale said the president will hold roundtable talks with at least 20 business leaders from various sectors and bilateral meetings with the leaders of India, South Korea, Brazil, and Germany. To discuss this, we're joined by Murkthar, Suleiman, a communications strategist. Thank you for giving us your time on Nigeria Tonight. Okay, Nigeria's president is now in New Delhi for the G20 Leaders Summit. What are some of the things Nigeria should try and achieve at this summit?
It is very important that the Nigerian president actually goes into this meeting with the agenda to ensure that Nigeria is placed at the fore of economic activities, because we are actually suffering that right now in the country. With the removal of fuel subsidy, we don't know the dimensions that the economy of the country is actually going. So my hope for President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is that attending this meeting, you're attending a meeting of 19 countries plus the European Union, and not just the countries, there are also going to be private sector actors that are also going to be there in that particular summit. And it is very, very paramount that the president ensure that we come back with some investment, because we know that one of the things that we're actually suffering right now is foreign direct investments in the country. And that's largely because of the kind of economic policies that the past administration have actually doled out over the course of the last 8 years. And we're trying to see how we can recoup from that. So the president should try as much as possible to see how much of international conglomerates he can drag down into the country to ensure that investments can actually become the private actor investments can actually become the driver of the economy of Nigeria. That's one of the biggest things I hope that the president can actually take out. And we're also looking at bilateral relations with other countries to see how we can expand our trade, especially with other African countries. Because for me, at the core of trade and economic activity in Africa right now, I would always place the African Free Trade Continental Trade Agreement at the fore of the conversation. We do too much of our businesses with other countries outside of Africa than within Africa. So we need to find a way to see how we can keep that money within our business.
So it's safe to say from what you're saying that you concur with the statement put out by the media aide to the president on most of the things that you just mentioned that they wish to accomplish at this summit.
It is one thing to say something. It is one thing to say it. It's another thing to actually do it. Nigeria has never been short of policies or fine ideas. The problem has always been the implementation of it. So the precedents of what we've been in the country over the past few years have actually taught us that we need to tread carefully whenever we get promises from our political leaders. So it's difficult for me to actually take the words of Ajuri Njalale, hook, line, and sinker, until I begin to see its yield results.
Concrete. Okay. Fair enough. We live in a country where, like you said, so much promises. But would it be more beneficial for Nigeria if she becomes a member of the G20 countries? That conversation has been ongoing for a bit, and we did hear from the same media aide that they're checking out the benefits and the risk involved. What would be some of the criteria for a country to be a member of this group? A country like Nigeria, for instance, with many benefits accruing.
Well, the beautiful thing about the G20 is that it's not really a formal union. It's not like the United Nations. It's not like the African Union, or it's not a formal union. It's an informal gathering of like minds. So there's no really binding. There's no really legal binding for any agreements that is made. It's more or less like a gentleman handshake for most of the agreements that for most of the deliberations that actually ensue during the summit. So there's no particular, it's just willingness actually of the country to join. I think it might be important for Nigeria, I don't know, because I am wary between the legally binding unions that we belong to and then how that can actually mash up with the informal sectors that we would want to also contribute to as well. There is no specific criteria to join the G20 countries. It's just more or less like if you share the vision of the G20 countries as it stands, if you have a large economic if you currently have a large economic control of your region, and if you're also very influential politically, all of which Nigeria actually checks all the boxes. These are not set in stone criteria per se for us to actually join, for any country to actually join the G20. But again, there are 19 countries currently, and the European Union as a part of it. If Nigeria joins, does it become G21? That becomes the question that they actually have to ask.
Oh, okay. Nigeria is currently not in that G20 economy. That is very clear. What are the policies, reforms, or structure that must be in place to be a member of this elite group? I think I asked you that already. There's something else. India is the 5th largest economy in the world with a GDP of 3.2 trillion, while Nigeria just outside the top 20 economies. Are we on the right track in terms of GDP growth?
It's difficult to actually say if we are on the right track currently because we are having beautiful policies that are rolled out but poorly implemented. So in a way, we are moonwalking as a country. That's the best way I can put it. We sort of think we're moving forward, but we are also retrogressing or staying in the same place. So far, so good, to the best of my knowledge and what I think has been happening since when President Bola Tinubu took over, is that some of the policies he has actually doled out economically are actually something that we need at this point in time. But the problem is just that we are suffering the ripple effect without the government having plans on how to cushion most of this effect. In order to ensure that we can actually uplift the economy from where it is currently, like I said earlier, we need to ensure that we can get foreign direct investment. And for those foreign direct investment to come into the country, we have to ensure that security is in place. We have to stabilize our FX. Because if we're going to be doing trade with other countries, then we have to all agree on what unit of currency we're going to use. I know that BRICS is currently having a different conversation about the unit of currency to be used for international trade beyond the dollar, because the dollar is being weaponized. But Nigeria still remains the dollar. So how can we stabilize the naira itself to ensure that it can match up with foreign investors as they're coming in here to invest, they can also make back their money. We also have to, one very key important thing that we need to put in place in this country to ensure that it's industrial driven is we have to ensure that there's stable power. If we can ensure that there's stable power, and then manufacturers do not have to calculate the cost of generating primary source of power for them to actually manufacture, then it becomes a bit easier for them to make more profit and employ more people. Employability rates will go up because that cost that's supposed to go into power can actually be channeled into staff costs as well. So I think most of these things, if we can put security into place, put power into place, and then ensure enabling environment through adequate policies. So do we need to roll out tax moratorium for some of these companies when they come in? Do we have to adopt an indigenization policy for them to ensure that our people are actually the ones driving the affairs of this?
Fair enough. Mr. Suleiman, thank you very much for speaking with us. While we have cautious optimism, that's what I heard from your word, as we continue to do the work needed for Nigeria's growth. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.